Raspberry Pi 5 overclocked to a record 3.4 GHz, scores fastest performance yet. Overclocker Jeff Gilling succeeded in breaking the current world record for overclocking the Raspberry Pi 5. By achieving 3.4 GHz using multiple cooling solutions, Gilling breaks Raspberry Pi 5's clock limit. Breaking world records by no means is an easy task, particularly when the platform is as small as a Raspberry Pi. However, Jeff Gilling broke all the world records in his latest Raspberry Pi's overclocking experiment. Jeff was able to hit 3.4 GHz on its CPU, achieving the highest single and multi-core scores in Geekbench 6. The highest scores were previously held by Thomas Kaiser with 1037 single and 2137 multi-core scores. Jeff was able to break the record by reaching 3.3 GHz, which yielded 1092 single and 2163 multi-core scores. However, these clock speeds weren't achieved easily. Even though Jeff was able to hit 3.14 GHz on Pi Day a few months ago, there were voltage limitations, which didn't let the Pi 5 easily reach above 3.0 GHz. After the release of new firmware and the NMA emulation patch, this no longer seemed to be a problem for breaking the limits. With a custom code and some voltage tweaks, Jeff was able to maintain 3.3 GHz at around 1.07 volts, but reaching a stable 3.4 GHz was much harder. After failing several times, Jeff implemented various cooling methods, including Peltier cooling and a custom Noxure fan directly throwing air on the Pi. The Raspberry Pi 5 would keep freezing before the cooling methods were implemented, and even though the voltage was already at around 1.08 volts, the hardware wasn't able to complete the Geekbench 6 tests successfully. After adding some cooling methods, Jeff was able to hit a 1094 single-core score with 3.3 GHz. Raspberry Pi 5 Geekbench 6 scores at 3.4 GHz. Reaching over 1100 points and 3.4 GHz was a much bigger challenge since his system was getting memory errors constantly. But installing another heatsink under the Pi board and increasing the voltage to 1.08 volts worked flawlessly. Not only did the Pi 5 achieve 3.4 GHz but also resulted in 1121 single-core and 2219 multi-core points, breaking his previous records. Even though Jeff had this incredible achievement, he doesn't recommend trying this at home. This was just a fun experiment for him, which yielded tiny improvements. Considering the Raspberry Pi 5 consumed as much as 20 watts at 3.4 GHz, it's not something that would be useful for regular users. Still, he was lucky to have this golden silicon from his wafer die, which is one of the reasons why he was able to hit such high clocks and Geekbench scores.